Listen only mode.
Okay, so welcome everyone. We got a lot of technology going on today. We're streaming live on Google. We're streaming live to GoToMeeting. And actually, you know what? Before I forget, let me make sure that I record this as well. So just bear with me a second while I add this in, and I will record this just to make sure we get it covered in all bases. Okay. First of all, if you have questions, what you could do is you can tweet into hashtag HangWithWillie. Okay. So at any point you can tweet in to that hashtag, and then we'll get your question, and then I'll try and answer it in this hour-long broadcast. Now, what I'm going to be talking about today is beginner piano. Okay, so we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be approaching this like you're a beginner to the piano. If you're more interested in the intermediate to advanced, then I would take a look at the session this afternoon. I will say, though, there's probably a lot of techniques here, though, that you might learn today that you could even utilize even if you are a more advanced level player. All right, so the first thing we're going to start with is flow and touch. This was actually a question that I ended up getting from one of my students. They submitted online. By the way, if you haven't done the free, the submission for the free Skype lesson, please definitely do that now. Right? I will be doing a drawing. The reason I do a drawing, by the way, it's the fairest way. If I simply go through and I say, okay, I like that one the best, then that's not going to be fair. So this is the most fair way for me to be able to draw somebody that I can work with. Okay, so if you've already submitted, you don't have to worry about it. Your name is already in there. Okay, so you're all good to go. I also want to say that it's Black Friday, and first of all, I had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving as well. If you're from out of the U.S., I hope you had a great Thursday. I'm extremely grateful for what a wonderful day it was and be able to actually, obviously hang out with my family. Being Black Friday, you know about all the specials and stuff like that. So we're doing 40 to 60% off on any DVDs or downloads, and then also you're going to get one of my CDs. This is the third CD with my group. This is JAZZEDGE Edge. The name of the CD is The Ridge. This will come in all DVD purchases for free. So anything, if you've purchased today, you will get one of these DVDs. If you purchased anytime over the next couple of days up until Cyber Monday, we will be putting in one of these CDs along with you. If you get more than one, then you can use it as a present for someone else. Okay, so the beginner piano, so flow and touch. This is always a difficult one because when you're first learning the piano, we're so worked up on just trying to get the right notes. So a lot of times we don't think so much about flow and touch. Now, first of all, what is flow and touch? This is like, if I'm like really like hitting my hands and I'm like kind of like it's like really heavy and kind of abrasive. It's not like smooth and flowing, or if I'm like playing my scales and it's like really heavy. I'm really thinking down rather than horizontally. All right, so let's start with that. When you play the piano, okay, and I say this is a piano, obviously it's a keyboard, but it's the same concept. Whether you're doing this, whether you're doing even organ, I can think down or I can think horizontally. Okay, so I can think left to right. And the faster you play, the less you can think downward motion. Okay, because if you're always thinking down, like gravity's pulling you down, right, then it's going to be difficult for you to be able to play fast. So there's two ways of thinking about this, though. We need to think down at certain points, right, and we also need to think horizontally at other points. So let's talk about those two. When we're going to play chords, all right, what we want to think is like if I hit the chord, I don't want to just stop right there. This is really, really important, and I hope that you all really clue into this, all right? And then, by the way, the GoToMeeting, I'm sorry if the video is not as clear as the other stuff. Normally we'd be using, you know, this camera over here for the GoToMeeting, but I just did this as a backup so that people could get onto both, because I know some people had some problems with the Google Hangout. All right, so if I'm playing a chord and I just stop right like that, I put a lot of pressure and tension on my wrist right there. Okay, so I'm just basically like, bam, stopping. Right? What I want to think at that point is I want that downward motion. So I want to do this. This is where I drop my wrist. So you see how I'm like dropping the wrist? And if I'm going to play, I got to make this bench go down a little bit lower for this one. Okay? If I play, I just stop like this. And I know some of you can't see that, probably can't see my hands, but actually no, it looks like you should both be able to see it. Right? So here I'm just stopping. Right? And you can also hear the sound. It's very kind of abrasive, isn't it? You know? Whereas if I go, first of all, do you see the difference? Do you see what I'm doing? See how I'm like dropping my wrist down and bringing it back up? So I'm not just stopping the wrist. Same thing I can do with my scales as well. See how I'm like staying loose with those wrists? So I'm not staying stiff. Okay? I'm not stiff. Right? I'm staying loose with my wrist. I'm allowing my wrist to be able to move. Right? And it's not just, you know, staying, you know, rigid. Now, there are times in which I might want to just like keep my shoulders spread out, my arms up, and then do more of a grab with my fingers. And notice here that I don't have as much motion in my wrist, okay? Because if I'm always thinking down with the wrist and always, you know, breaking that wrist and bringing it down like that, it's going to be very difficult for me to be able to play fast, because this is what it would look like. You know, I mean, I'm going up and down with my wrist. So this is where I have the support from my shoulders, all right? Can bring my arms out a little bit. See, I can do more of a grab with my fingers like this. More of a grab with my fingers than thinking down. Now, which way is right and which way is wrong? They're both right. You use them at different times in your playing. So if you're going to play like a lot of chordal stuff, then this is where, like, all right, when you hit that chord, you want to kind of like get that wrist, you know, a little bit of motion in the wrist. If you're going to be playing a lot of line stuff, right, like improvised lines, you know, whatever it is, then you're not going to want to be thinking down. You're going to want to be thinking that horizontal. And this is where you're going to support it with your shoulders. So if I have a chord here, nice. See how I'm like thinking nice and loose over here? But now here in my left hand, I'm not going to keep that really stiff. I'm going to like kind of move that around a little bit. So if I'm playing just chords, see that subtle motion in my wrist? Right? This is very important because it's going to change the tone that you get out of your instrument. All right? Now there are certain times where you might want to have a locked wrist like that and like really like, okay, like to really like get that nice percussive feel. But even in those times you could do like there's a very subtle motion of the wrist. Okay? So the reason that's so important is because if you don't do that, you're probably going to start to get pain in your wrist, and you'll probably also start to get pain in your elbow. Why is that? Because when you hit this, and this is stiff, right, where does it get transferred to? It's going to get transferred over to your elbow. Whereas if this breaks, like this, you know, you like kind of let the energy release through the wrist, then it's going to release it over at the elbow as well, okay? So if you're finding that you're getting kind of stiff or whatnot, I would suggest take a look at what's going on with your wrist. Is your wrist really staying very stiff, okay, or do you have motion in your wrist? Okay, and then remember, you can submit questions through Google Hangout. I'm not sure if I have any questions over here. Let's see here quick. What do we got? There we go. Questions. Okay. I see a test. Thanks, Mike, for the test. I appreciate that. So if you have any questions, feel free to submit your questions. Okay, now let's talk about reading music. For some people, reading music is really difficult. For some people, it's really boring. For some, they don't even understand why you would want to read music. Reading music is extremely important. Let me explain why. When we're going to communicate with someone else, through whatever language we speak, let's just say it's English, okay? How are we going to communicate? We're going to communicate verbally, right? But we also have the written word. Now, I don't have to get into too much detail. We all understand how important the written word is. We write things down so that then I could hand it to you and I could say, okay, there you go, and then you read it, you process it, and then you do whatever you need to do with that information. If I had to tell you verbally all of the time what to do, what to do next, it become very difficult, right? Just historically, it'd be very difficult for as a society for us to move on, because remember, like oral history, a lot of history got lost over the years because we never wrote anything down. But as we started to write things down, now our history, and our knowledge evolves. All right, so anyway, that's kind of like, okay, that's great. How does that apply to music? Well, in music, it's the same thing. If I had to tell you all the notes, right, or I had to write out every one of the notes and then explain it to you, then that would be very difficult for me to be able to show you songs. Right? It'd be very difficult for you to be able to remember songs. And more importantly, it'd be very difficult for you to be able to build a repertoire of songs so that you could sit down and just play them. Because what happens is, unless you're playing a song a lot, you're probably going to forget it. I'm sure you've forgotten songs. If you play piano long enough, you get to a point where you forget more songs than you actually know, right? You end up forgetting a lot of music because if you're not playing it all the time, you just can't keep it in your memory banks. You need that repetition, right? So reading music allows us an easy way of being able to get back to what it is that we played previously without having to go through this whole learning process. This is why I don't do the stuff of like just putting in the names of the notes. To me, as a teacher, I find that this does not set you up for success, because this sets you up to constantly need me or need somebody to tell you exactly what the names of the notes are. I would also say that when you're putting in a note, if you have a note here, and this is G, don't write in the name of the note, or don't put the name of the note in next to it. Start to discipline yourself to try and remember what those notes are. All right, so let's actually talk about how to build that stuff. And before we get into that, let's do half steps and whole steps. This is a real quick review. A half step is anytime we go from one note to the very next note. So here you see I'm going from a white note to a black note, or if I go from a white note to a white note, black to white, okay? These are all half steps. Now, one way of knowing if it's a half step is there will be no note in between. If I did this, see how there's this note right there? That G flat is in between the F and the G, so we know it's not a half step. Well, what about that? Okay, was there a note in between? Well, no, that's it. Okay, so that's a half step. Another half step. What about that? Well, there's no note in between. And remember, when I say note in between, I mean going this way or this way, all right, depending on which direction you're going. All right, so is there a note in between if I go like this? Because sometimes we look at this and we say, oh, there's no note in between, but guess what? We got to think about this whole, the whole keyboard, right? So we got to like kind of scan across and say, oh, no, wait a second, we got that black note right there, that A flat, that's in between, okay? So we know it's not a half step. All right, so the first thing is you have to know your half steps. All right, so a good practice, just take any note, find the next half step. That's a half step higher, that's a half step lower. You might also hear this referred to as a minor second. Okay, so a minor second. A major second or a whole step is two half steps put together. So there's your whole step. And you'll know it's a whole step because you will have one note in between. Right? What about this? Whole step or half step? Well, is there a note in between? No, it's a half step. What about that? Well, we got there. We got one note in between, that's C, so this is a whole step. Now, what if we have more than one note in between? This is what we would just call a leap, or this would be a leap. right? So this is not a whole step or a half step, okay? It's just a leap or a skip, right? It's outside of whole step and half step territory, right? So right now we're just worried about whole steps, half steps. This, whole step or a half step. Well, we got that note in between, so this is a whole step. So you want to get familiar with the keyboard. This is a good exercise to like be able to say, okay, well, what note is that? That's an A flat or a G sharp. Let me go up a whole step. There's B flat. Okay, let me go down a whole step. There's G flat. So this is you just kind of getting familiar with the lay of the land with the keyboard, right? So just sit down and just kind of just explore and get familiar with that keyboard. All right. Now, the next step from there is building simple chords. A lot of times, students just want to sit down and want to play simple chords. So how do you build these simple chords? Well, there's some very easy ways of doing that. There are two basic chords that we need to learn, you need to know. We have a major triad, fix that. We have major, and we have minor. Okay? A major triad, right, is, we could say that it's 1, 3, and 5, but I'm not going to do it that way just yet. Instead, I'm going to say that we start with a note, okay? We start with any note. So let's just say F, right? Then what we do is we don't count the note we're on. We count up 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps. So then we have 4 half steps. And then we count up 1, 2, 3 half steps. Okay? So this is our pattern. Right? So we start on a note, count up 4 half steps, count up 3 half steps. So I could do this on any note. If I take G flat, right? Start on G flat, I count up 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps, then I count up 1, 2, 3 half steps. There's my G flat triad. Now, fingering wise, I was just using these fingers right here. No, bad. But I'm doing it because I'm standing up, right? Typically, what you want to do is you want to use your thumb, your middle finger, and your pinky, okay? Or your thumb, second finger, and fourth finger, which is your ring finger, right? You want to use one of those two fingerings. Why? Well, it starts to become more evident down the road when you're moving between chords. But one of the most important reasons is that you can actually hurt yourself if you end up using the wrong fingering. A lot of times, students don't like using the thumb when they're playing these chords. They'll use just like 1, 2, and 3, or they'll do this. I call this the bear claw, like the 1, 2, 3. They're like, just doing this, right? That's not good either, because what happens is it puts a lot of pressure on your arm. In fact, just do this. I mean, just do this with your hand. Curl in your fingers, because this is normally what happens. You can feel it. I feel the pressure right here in my arm right now. Whereas if I do this, pressure's all gone, right? I don't feel it at all in my arm. So we want to play smart. There's playing quick. Right? We can always learn how to play quick, but then there's playing smart. And myself personally, I'd rather teach you and I'd rather learn myself how to play smart, because I want to be able to do this for the rest of my life. I don't want to end up like, like learning something quick only to end up hurting myself or get myself into these really bad habits that down the road I need to change, I need to fix. So it's really important to learn that stuff the right way the first time around. Okay, so there's our triad. Let's just try doing it on another. Let's take E flat. We go up 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps. Go up another 3. 1, 2, 3. Now we have our E flat major triad. Okay. All right. Now let me just see if there's any questions on this stuff. Okay, all right, good. We'll deal with, I can deal with most of these questions in a second. All right, a lot of good questions, by the way. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. You're going to hear some of these questions, and I think you guys are going to appreciate these questions. All right, so there's E flat major. Let's talk about how we make a minor chord. We start on any note, and we go up 3 half steps, and then 4 half steps. It's just switched. Okay? And remember, when I say start on any note, we have to start someplace. So just pick any note. Let's take B. That's always a challenging triad to work on. So here we have B. We go up 1, 2, 3 half steps. And then from this note, count up 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps. Now notice what I just did. You can see just watch right here. Watch this spot right here. So I just played this. See what I did? See that motion? So when I move up to that black note, to that G flat, the F sharp, okay, remember these are all flats just to make it easy, okay, but typically that would be an F sharp for B minor, right? When I move up like that, notice how I move, how deep I am in the key bed. So if I'm down here, do this, if I'm up here, and I move back. I'm not doing this, okay? And this is where it's really good. Like I can see myself right in a video right now that like, see how my shoulder just lifted up by having to do that? This is where it's great to videotape yourself when you play or play with a mirror or whatnot. Because really, you should be sitting like this. See how I'm sitting upright? I'm not like straight, you know, I'm just like, just sitting upright, nice and relaxed. You notice that on the bench, I just have to sit at the very end. I still have about that much, you know, 4 fingers length at the back side here, okay? And then notice how far back I'm sitting, you know? It seems really, really far, right? But then this is where I move in like this. So I can like move back, I can move forward. Okay? All right, so B minor. Let's just take one more minor triad. Let's take, I don't know, G minor. Start on G, go up 1, 2, 3 half steps, go up 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps. There's G minor. Okay? So that's how we can make our major and minor triads. That's half steps and whole steps, and also how we can make our major and minor triads. Let me take a couple of questions here. This one is from V. Lyons. Speaking of remembering songs, how often do I need to play songs to keep them in my repertoire and keep them worked up? Once a week? Question mark. Right. I'm going to give you what I think is one of the best ways of doing this. Okay. Take your music, whatever it is, whether it be in just regular, just a piece of paper, or if it's in a book. If it's in a book, go to the library, wherever, make a photocopy. If you bought the book legitimately, you can make a photocopy for your own archival purposes. Don't let anyone tell you, oh, you can't photocopy this. Sometimes you go to like a Kinko's or wherever, and they'll be like, oh, you can't photocopy. No, you absolutely can do that, all right? It is your legal right to make an archival copy of any of your sheet music as long as it's just for you, okay? You might also have a printer at home that you could scan and whatnot. Anyway, point is, make a copy. This is your throwaway copy. Okay, so you have your book, you have your book at, hey, let's do this. You got your book at home, and then you got your throwaway copy, right? Or maybe at home it's just a regular piece of 8.5 by 11, and you put it into a 3-ring binder. But the point is, your home copy, right, is that's your book. That's like that's your repertoire book. That's your book of songs that you know. You keep it nice and neat. You keep it organized, okay? Because that's your fake book. That's your music book. This over here is like, you know what? If it gets lost, it gets wet, it gets ruined, you don't care about it, okay? Personally, I might make like 2 or 3 copies of this just to have them so that if one of them gets lost. Then what you do is you take 3 or 4 of them, okay? Just 3 or 4 songs, whatever your most recent songs are, maybe some songs from the past, whatever. Boom, staple them together, fold it up, stick it in your back pocket. Now this is why you do that. Throughout the day, we always have 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, whatever, okay? You find your own time, you're at a red light, just waiting, okay? Well, I just pull it out, just take a quick peek at my music, right? And what I'm doing when I'm looking at this music, right, I'm just like burning